Gill. Next, I would like to introduce our Assemblywoman Sheila Oliver, our New Jersey Assemblyman Giblin, who's on his way, and also our Montclair's very own Essex County Freeholder Vice President at Large, Brendan Gill.
First, I want to thank Councilwoman Baskerville for putting together this really amazing event and inviting me to introduce this esteemed panelist, which really for me stemmed from an email I sent her after the election where I wanted to know more about women in politics and how we can affect change here in Montclair. So we also here have today Joseph Hartnett, former township manager and current chief executive of Newark Watershed and Conservation Development Corporation. Mayor Robert Jackson.
Well, I've been asked to start things off. I'm Joe Hartnett, and hopefully what I'll be doing is setting the table for the rest of the panel here with just some basic background and information regarding local government. Is that okay? You're okay? And I just want to say I'm honored to be here. Always feels warm for me to come back to Montclair, my hometown, for a number of years also. And I'm honored to be with our mayor, Robert Jackson, Senator Gill, Freeholder Gill, Assemblywoman Oliver, distinguished panel, and I especially thank Dr. Baskerville for remembering that I'm still around and thanking you for that. And he's coming up with pencils.
Yeah, I had a pencil, but who needed pencils or pens or whatever? We're going to get the volume up because I understand it's a little difficult in the back. Anybody?
Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give a brief history of local government generally, and then a brief history of Montclair's form of government and how it got to be here. Local government, of course, started back in colonial days with royal grants from kings and queens of England, who would grant land to be managed by people who were their subjects. Of course, after the Revolution, we're now the United States of America, and in 1798 was the first time that there was legislation to formalize local governments. And these were the tasks at that time. And I always find this interesting because this is at the beginning of our country, and here we are today, still with the same tasks and many of the same controversies. Setting up local government, which would elect a presiding officer, read a statement of order, and the powers of local government were to build and maintain roads, to manage and improve common lands, to maintain animal pounds, and destroy noxious wild animals. Because in those days, animals just roamed all over the place. And to support the poor. And so many of these issues are still with us today. And I certainly can remember some from when I was manager in Montclair, and they still tug at people's hearts and are controversial issues. And of course, finally, the ability to tax in order to raise money to do these things. From 1798, for the next 100 years, the Township Act was amended 168 times as conditions changed and different forms of government came into being. In 1899, there was a complete revamping here in New Jersey, the Township Act of 1899, which is the basic modern form of government. And over the years, again, various amendments and so on, there are a number of variations on this, where you have boroughs, cities, administrators, villages, etc. And this I always find interesting. Probably the most defining pivot point in the history of local government was, I don't know how many of you might have read about it or studied it, called the Great Storm of 1900 in Galveston, Texas. The worst natural disaster in the history of the United States. So many people were lost, they're not even sure how many people died, but it's estimated 8,000 to 12,000 people lost their lives. An incredible storm. In those days, they had the slate roof shingles, and the shingles were actually blowing around with such force that they were decapitating people. Cruise ships wound up 12 miles inland. So you can imagine a cruise ship, here we are 12 miles west of Manhattan, sitting on Bloomfield Avenue. The upshot of that and why this is important to local government is the governor of Texas stepped in and appointed a commission to deal with this incredible disaster. And he divided up duties. You got a banker to take charge of finances, a law enforcement person from state police to take charge of public safety, a big contractor to take charge of rebuilding, and set up a commission to rebuild Galveston and to deal with all the issues they had to deal with. After that was done, in these emergency circumstances, this commission did a terrific job in dealing with the health issues, all the issues that had to be dealt with, and getting Galveston back on its feet. Because this was so successful, but keep in mind it was under strict emergency conditions, this idea of having a commission swept the country. Hundreds and hundreds of municipalities all over the country started adopting what's now known as, and was known then as, the commission form of government, where different elected officials would be in charge of different departments. You would elect a commissioner who would be in charge of the police department, a commissioner who would be in charge of public works, so on and so forth. So, for years, this was becoming the most prevalent form of government in the United States. However, what happened is, as anybody in modern business would understand, once the emergency situation was removed, people gradually came to understand this is a terrible way to manage or run anything. I enjoy often speaking before business groups, Chamber of Commerce, Rotaries, what have you, and if the subject of form of government comes up, I always love asking the group, can anyone in this auditorium or meeting room raise their hand and tell me one successful business that's run by a committee? And the room always goes silent. So people started waking up to this fact that this is really a terrible way to manage something. So just as fast as it was a trend to have the commission form of government, it became a trend to revoke the commission form of government. How that played out in New Jersey back in the 1930s, there was a commission, unfortunately called a commission also by the state government, the Walsh Commission, which started establishing better forms of government for municipalities to adopt. And then in 1950, we got what's called the Faulkner Act. And what's very interesting about that, of course, is that it's named after former mayor of Montclair, Mayor Faulkner. He was appointed by the state government to chair this committee to once again study what's the best way to set up municipal governments. The Faulkner Act basically resulted in establishing three types of municipal government. Mayor Council form of government, and there's variations on each of these, but these are the three basic forms under the Faulkner Act. Mayor Council form of government, where the mayor is the chief executive officer of the municipality, and almost always directly elected by the voters, so there's more accountability to the voters. Council manager form of government, where the manager is the chief executive officer, and the elected officials serve as like a board of directors. And then small municipality, because there's so many small towns in New Jersey, gave them several choices as to how they could set up. What is a municipality exactly? A municipality is a municipal corporation. In the sense of being a corporation, it's no different than any business corporation, other than it's a municipal corporation established by state law. As it says there, granted by state law, but it provides a mechanism for self-governance of common interest. But I always remind people, municipal corporations were established and always are established by state government. So municipal government is A lot of people don't like to hear this, but it's the truth. 100% creatures of state government. Not 90%, not 95%, 100%. So the state completely regulates what municipalities can do. As for the types and forms of municipal government, that's the one we just had. So I can keep talking. Anybody knows what this is? I'm going to slow me down. Slides aren't there. Down to 9.